Hello there, everybody, and welcome to The Vanishing of Ethan Carter. I'm about a decade late at this point playing this for the channel. This has been around since 2014, but I still think it holds up remarkably well. And this is a walking simulator type of a game mixed with elements of clue gathering and mystery solving. For those of you who may not have played of or heard of this game, it's got very similar vibes to Murdered Soul Suspect, which I have also played on this channel. And I just really love this type of game. I wish that there were more games out there like this, and I am so excited to be playing this finally because I just really love this game. Now, this game focuses very, very heavily on storytelling and exploration, so it is a bit of a more laid back experience, and it's also relatively short. I am going to be posting this as one entire video as opposed to posting it in parts as I normally do. But for those of you who prefer to watch videos in smaller chunks, I will be including some timestamps so that it's easier to view in pieces. And this should take me 2 to 3 hours. It is going to be a 100% run, and I am going to do my very best to avoid spoilers while also giving my thoughts as we move along. Now that I have told you all what you're in for, I'm going to stop talking now. We're going to jump in and we're going to see what this is all about. And it warns you right from the very beginning that it is a narrative experience that does not hold your hand, which is very true.
Ethan Carter I didn't know, but he knew who I was. When the police won't help you and the priests don't believe you, you call on Paul Prospero. You call on me. If you're a kid like Ethan, you're right. Plenty do. Ethan's letter started out just like any other fan mail. But soon there were mentions of things no little boy should know about. There are places that exist that very few people can see. Ethan could have drawn a map. I hadn't entered Red Creek Valley yet, but already I could feel its darkness reaching out for me. Finding Ethan Carter wasn't going to be as easy as knocking on his door. I was too late for that. To find Ethan, I had to figure out what this place was trying to hide from me.
So we are going to be playing as Paul, and we're going to go through Red Creek Valley in search of Ethan Carter. Now, because the game doesn't hold your hand, it can be a little bit difficult to figure out where to go. One thing I will say before we take off and get too carried away is that nothing in this game is truly missable. So don't worry about missing anything. You can come back and get anything that you have missed at a later date. But we are going to try and get everything as early as we can to avoid backtracking. In this first area here, if you want to move on, you can just follow the train tracks. But there is a little side mission that we can do in the woods. And what we're going to do, I'm actually going to walk in a counter-clockwise motion, and I'm going to be triggering some traps that I find in the woods. There's going to be 2 on the left side, 2 on the right side, and then 1 in the distance. Every time that we step on a trap, we're going to try and use our sense ability on it, and this will reveal a little part of the overall picture that we are trying to paint. And some of these traps look pretty ugly, but don't worry, we are not actually in any danger. You don't have health in this game. There is no way to die or to get a game over or anything like that. So we have our 2 traps on this side. We're going to cross over. And we're going to go into this portion of the woods here. And this might seem insignificant. Why am I doing this? What does this have to do with the story? But believe it or not, these little side missions are very important and are actually required to see the true ending of this game. And we only need to find one more trap. Now, the reason I went in this direction is because our final trap is located behind this one. So we just kind of crawl over the rocks here, and it's just over here to my right. And once we have found all of these, we'll be able to paint a somewhat gruesome picture here. And there is also a note, and this happens to be a story that has been left by Ethan. So let's go ahead and read this. This is a story that he wrote entitled Sap. An old man came to the forest every day to drink sap from the trees. To get there, the old man had to step around many dangerous traps. The villagers believed this old man had hidden a jade amulet in the forest. But the old man wanted the villagers to believe this because then they would search the forest for treasure and not drink his sap. One cool fall night, someone set fire to the forest, and the fire spread to the village. The old man escaped the fire by covering himself in sap. When he returned to the village, he found all the villagers' bones. The old man sat down and cried. Then he found more sap to drink. And then on the back, there is a drawing as well.
Ethan, I told you, you can't be here.
But Gramp, I wrote something for you.
That's real nice. Thank you. Just leave it. I'll read it later.
And so the reason that these little side stories become important is because they are responsible for telling us a little bit of background about Ethan, his thoughts and his feelings, and we're also going to get a lot revealed about his family. So now that we've delved into Ethan's world, you can see that everything has gone back to normal. But you'll also notice that there is quite a bit of symbolism and parallel between what Ethan writes and what's going on in the real world. You know, there's a lot of liquor bottles out here. Not necessarily sap, but he was talking to his grandpa, an old man, drinking in the forest. And then we will also find an article, a newspaper article, after we read his story. One dead in a house fire. In Bayfield County, a fire damaged a historic home in Red Creek Valley Wednesday morning, according to officials from the Bayfield County Fire Department. A family of 6 was asleep when the blaze broke out at the remote house, once owned by Albert Vandegrift, at 46 Old Ogden Road in Red Creek Valley. Gail Carter, 58, was pronounced dead at the scene. Remaining family members were able to escape. Carter's husband, Edwin, 62, told investigators he may have fallen asleep with a lit cigarette in his hand. Firefighters were dispatched to the scene at 1:22 a.m. and remained at the scene until around 5 a.m. Wednesday. They returned to the property 4 hours later to extinguish hot spots, which had rekindled. And then on the back of this is another article, once again talking about the Vandegrifts. Members of the Vandegrift family again gathered in the Bayfield County Courthouse to debate the fate of the Vandegrift fortune, which has remained in escrow since 1961 when family patriarch Albert Vandegrift, 71, died in a mining accident, the after effects of which nearly destroyed Vandegrift Industrial and severely damaged the local economy. James Vandegrift, 38, of Chicago, argued that his father's demands were unreasonable and that many Vandegrift family members have personal reasons for wanting to avoid living in Red Creek Valley on the Vandergriff estate, as stipulated in the elder Vandergriff's will. The recent fire in which the Vandergriff home was damaged, he said, only underlined his family's concerns. So already, very, very early on, we have our first achievement, and we are already getting some backstory about Ethan, his grandfather, some of the tragedies that have gone on here, and about the area as well. We get a little bit of backstory about Red Creek Valley. Reading the newspaper is not necessary if you don't want to do that. We've pretty much done everything that we can in this first area, so we are ready to move on. And you can see that it looks as if nothing has really changed since that newspaper article has been written at a first glance. It's very desolate out here, and things are in a huge state of disrepair.
Red Creek Valley seemed like a quiet, ordinary place. I've learned two things in my life. No place is truly quiet, and nowhere is really ordinary. Ethan warned me about that. Warned me not to be fooled by what I saw here. He didn't need to worry. I'd worked dozens of cases, hundreds. This would be my last one. Already I knew that.
Part of what makes this game so beautiful, I think, is that they used a lot of photogrammetry when they did the art style and put this game together. And I think that is a technique that has made this age a lot better. I'm playing the Redux version, which is a newer version of the original that came out a couple of years after 2014. But even if you play the original, everything just looks really, really good. And you can even see there's dust floating by. This is a great game to play with headphones because you'll hear things like the creaking of the wood underneath. And it really lets you feel the environment and just get really, really into it. Now, unfortunately, the beauty and the splendor and the peacefulness is disturbed pretty quickly because we've come across some dried blood here. So this is our first inspection point. Anytime Paul sees something that he can use his skills on as a detective, he'll kind of deduce and guess what could be happening. And in this case, we also need to find a crank that's missing off of this rail car. And in order to find the item that you're looking for, you're going to want to line up the words until it highlights in yellow. And this will point you in the direction of the item that you are looking for. So this will give us a hint. We can see that the crank is sitting on a beach by some rocks. And it will do a full spin around. It'll give you a good view of your surroundings. If you happened to just walk by this for some reason, you were on a mission and you went right past this, you do not need the hint in order to find that item. That is something that you can come across naturally with your own exploration. And that's one of the beautiful things about this game, is that it gives you clues and it holds your hand a little bit, but it doesn't really give you direction, and you are able to sort of fumble your way around on your own and solve things as you go around and look at the environment. And unfortunately, there's more bad news. We're entering into our first investigation, as I like to call them in this game. These are separate from our little side stories, and most of these, believe it or not, are not necessary for the game's progression. but I can't think of a lot of people who would look at these horribly severed legs and skip them and not be the least bit curious to figure out what in God's name is going on here. Especially when we are trying to find a little boy who has asked us for help after nobody else would help him. So I'm gonna follow the blood trail here, and I'm gonna find the rest of the corpse that got separated from the legs. We're going to come across several of these corpses throughout the game, and as we solve the death of the person who has died, we will get a better understanding as to what has gone on, and it will also help us to find Ethan. When you've found all of the clues, you can touch the body, and we will be able to view the scene and put the pieces together. But until you find all of the clues, you're not going to be able to do much. So you need to search around and make sure that you have all the clues. What I'm doing now, before I search for the rest of my clues, is I'm going to come down here and I'm going to look for the crank, which is sitting right here. And if you weren't interested in solving that mystery, or it was something you wanted to come back for later, you are free to just carry on down this path and ignore it. Which I love. I love that there is a freedom of choosing what you think is important or what is interesting. You can pretty much run past most of the investigative stuff in this game and make it to the end, which is very unique and very, very interesting. I do need to go back for the train car. I guess I'll do that first. It doesn't really matter what order you do this stuff in, as long as you find all of the clues that you are looking for. I will, of course, be showing everybody where those are. So we're gonna get in this old piece of equipment and we're gonna drive it back towards the crime scene. We're actually going to be going back over those severed legs. But don't worry, you can't contaminate or ruin anything in this crime scene, so not to worry. It's very, very slow going. I'm gonna back it up almost to the very end here. Here should be good. I'm gonna leave it running for now. I drove past this jerry can that was full of gasoline. Now, what is interesting is that there didn't appear to be any kind of a fire. The body's not burned. I don't see any fire damage of any kind here. And then our next clue is going to be in between the canister and where the severed legs are, almost right in the middle actually. Over by this stump, there is a bloody rock. We're going to need to take that with us. And then if we go behind where I've parked the rail car, there is an indent where the rock has been taken from, and it is required to find that rock and to put it back in order to finish up this investigation. At this point, I have all of my clues, and the very last thing is just to park this rail car in the appropriate spot. And we can see here that the grass is a slightly darker, more faded out color than the surrounding grass. And that is where the rail car had been sitting for quite some time before it was moved. So we just need to put it back in its spot, and that will give us the more complete picture of how the scene looked. And it's pretty generous with where you put the car. I kind of like to put it really close to where the gasoline can is. And I'm still a little bit off. I could still move this a little bit forward, but for the purposes of our investigation, that should be good enough. Once you've gathered all of the clues, we're going to go back and touch the body, hold the button, and if we've gathered all of the clues, we will now see these spirits come out from the corpse, and they are going to go towards our clues. And this will sort of help us bring to life what happened during the instigation of the crime. So it looks like 3 people were involved. And you need to investigate all of these areas in order to be able to move on from here. So there's our train car. And then this spot over here should be our very last spot. So once again, just creating all of our clues. And once you have investigated all of the spirit areas and you've gotten the ghosts of all of the people involved, they will ask you to put the timeline together in the order that the events occurred. And there is no penalty if you get this wrong. Some of these are more difficult than others. We know that him dying would be the very, very last thing that happened. So if it helps, you can always move backwards, because you can go next and previous. So if you're absolutely positive that this is the very last thing that happened, you can put that there and work backwards. So why don't we do that? Why don't we put 5 and 6, because we know that those are the last 2 things, and then we can kind of work backwards. Right? His legs would have come off slightly before he started to crawl. So we're already halfway there to organizing all of our clues. And in my mind anyways, they would have been at the train most likely just before he had been hit by it. And so I'm gonna use this as clue number 3. And now we have to decide if the rock or the ropes came first. What was the initial catalyst for this event? So the person being tied to the tracks is the catalyst, because we don't see him until the very, very end. He was not present during the middle of this whole confrontation. So he was over here. And you can also see that there is a rock in Grandpa's hand here. So you know that Grandpa grabbed the rock before he spoke to the young man here. So I'm very satisfied with what we have here. It makes sense. It makes sense whether we look at it front to back or back to front. And once you're happy and you're sure that things are in the right order, you can press Y to visualize and watch how it played out.
Listen to me. We can destroy it. I know how.
You can't destroy it, Ethan. You can't destroy time. And that's what he is. He is forever.
Gale, honey, I wish there was another way. Travis, tell me where Ethan is. Now.
I'm giving the sleeper what he wants. What all of us want. Look, old man, you need to go home.
Ethan, run, goddammit. Go! Get out of here! Travis, close your eyes.
No wonder Ethan called for our help. God damn, that is dark. When you've done the sequence correctly, you will see all of the spirits return back into the body, and then you'll have one final spirit to follow, which will conclude the investigation. And it will usually point us in the correct direction, and will give us a hint as to where Ethan went next.
Grandpa? Stay away!
Ethan, I'm sick too. I can feel the sleeper in my head.
Then fight it! I have to destroy the room!
Corvus, I'm sorry. Ethan,
Oh no!
I can't let you do that.
So you'll get an achievement for solving Travis's death.
Whatever had turned Ethan's family against him, the grandfather was trying to resist. Age helps against those things that feed on hate. Not because of wisdom or experience, because the old are tired. Their hate is less useful.
And you'll get some very insightful, kind of deep observations by Paul as he goes through this place, and you have to be wondering what Paul is thinking as he comes across this absolute carnage as he tries to make sense of what's going on. And it's good that he has this supernatural ability to put things together, because it creates a much clearer picture for us. Once we've done those things, we are free to move on. Now, Paul also has the remarkable ability of being able to infinitely sprint, which comes in handy because we have to run some pretty long distances in this game. And then in between all of the horrible carnage that we find in Red Creek Valley, I do like to just take a moment and appreciate its beauty, because there's a lot of beauty here too. I promise I won't linger too long, but I just think this is a very pretty game. Now I'm going to come to this first post here, and rather than follow the obvious path, I'm going to go into the woods, because there is another side story in here. Kind of hidden, kind of easy to miss. What you're looking for is this pole with 4 television screens on it, and we're going to light these up in the order that they go. I believe that the order is randomized for every person, so just keep pushing until you get the correct combination. And then we are going to have to chase this spaceman through the woods. Now, sometimes it is easy to lose track of him. I'm not gonna lie. There have been a few times where I have had to restart this sequence. He's wearing a white outfit, but there are a lot of tall trees and foliage and whatnot that can get in the way. If you do need to restart this, all you're gonna do is go back to that light post and start over again. And if you think you've lost sight of him, just pay attention to the general direction that he's ran into, and as long as you don't veer off the path too badly, it shouldn't kick you out of this sequence. And we're just going to be following him through the forest until we come to a bit of a clearing. We're almost done this chase. He's getting picked up by his spaceship now. And we are going to follow him. Once again, getting sucked into another one of Ethan's little stories. So this is another required thing to do. And we're just gonna go for a little ride here. We will eventually reach a portion of space here where we are reunited with all of our fellow spaceships. You can then turn around and a compartment will open with Ethan's story here. This one is entitled Fangs. The beast had fangs, but was heavy and slow, so when it saw the light in the sky, it waited, thinking the light would go out like the others before it. When it did not, the beast rose up on its legs and went to the place where the fire was still burning. As the orange light died, another took its place. This one was blue, a bright and pure blue that the creature had only seen along the edge of the stars. The beast showed its fangs, and the light vanished. A moment later, the light appeared again between two distant trees. The beast wanted to go home, but could not ignore the light, so it chased it deeper into the forest.
Get out of my room, Travis!
Stories, always with the stories.
Get out!
I read the Fangs one. I liked the Beast. At least he gets to leave this goddamn place.
Well, Travis, you got your wish. You did get to leave here, just not in the way that you had hoped. We get another achievement for that, and we can see that the spaceship was actually this structure that Ethan probably played in, and I guess it kind of resembles a bit of a rocket ship, doesn't it? And you can see the magazine that he was referencing to get the idea for the spaceship. And based on the title of his story and what we've seen about his brother Travis so far, you can really tell that he really bullied Ethan a lot, and he definitely sees Travis as a bit of a bully. It's also difficult for me to try and figure out what exact year this game is from, because the rail car that we saw was probably from the 50s or 60s. This is a magazine from the 60s. I would have to guess it's probably in the early 70s. Ethan was probably born in the 60s. There's some evidence that I've been able to see that it takes place in the 70s, but I'm not exactly sure what exact year. And at this point we can move on and we can continue following the railroad tracks. They are going to lead us to where we need to go. You can tell that nobody has used these rail tracks for a very long period of time. We're still not seeing a lot of other civilization or people aside from Ethan's family. And this clock is also probably not right. It's stuck at 7:04, but judging by the time of day, that doesn't seem accurate. So onwards we go. We're gonna have to run here for a little bit. And there's not gonna be much in the way of exploration or really much to see until we get to that bridge over there.
No trains have been through here for a long time. That was part of a pattern. Large pieces of this country were thrown away, doomed to become, and then remain, the worst versions of themselves. Beneath all that rot, dark things grow.
It does help that we got that little bit of backstory by reading those newspaper articles at the very beginning of the game, because it does explain why this particular part of America has fallen into rot, and that's because the estate and a lot of this land has been under escrow.
I've seen every version of people hurting each other, hurting themselves. And we blame it on compulsion, selfishness, madness. I suppose the idea is, if you name a thing, you can control it. There are things in this world that cannot be named.
And again, we get some very gorgeous views along the way. If we zoom in on the bridge over there, that's the bridge that we came in on. And it looks so far away, doesn't it? Those are the trees that we emerged from. There's the bridge, and we've already walked all the way over here. And if we look down on the other side of the bridge, we will eventually be getting down to this area as well. So most of what you can see, you will be able to get to, which I also like. The map feels very, very big and wide and open, but it's actually not that big, and they give you ways to fast travel and to get back to any area that you need to get to, which is also fantastic. Now there are two houses here which I am just dying to go into. We're going to need to go into both of these. However, I want to go past these houses and go up the hill first. And my plan is to backtrack after I'm done in that area, so I might as well just do that first and then do the houses when I come back down, since I'm backtracking anyways. As tantalizing as it is, I'm going to continue on here up this dirt path. And when I get to this little bend here, for some reason this bend always kind of sticks out to me. You can just see a building up on the hill there. We're going to go into the forest at this point, and we can see that there are some flames.
People come here for many reasons. They want to ask me questions about the future. But I can see the future. So it is the past that interests me. If you want to find my house, you must answer the questions I ask of you. Does death bring peace or suffering? Would you prefer anonymity over notoriety? Do you feel victory when your words cause pain? Do you take that which you know you will not return? Is betrayal caused by inequality or injustice? Does sin come from the heart or the mind?
after being asked some very thought-provoking questions from that glowing light, we will come across another one of Ethan's stories here. This one doesn't have a title. A beautiful woman sat by a river. A witch appeared and told the woman she was to have a child. The woman began to cry with joy, but the joy turned to fear, and she could not stop crying. Fear turned to sadness. The woman continued to cry. She cried for months, hardly sleeping until the child was born. But the crying had aged the woman, and she was no longer beautiful. When he was old enough, her son climbed the mountain to find the home of the witch. He asked her if she could make his mother beautiful again. The witch asked the boy many questions. After hearing the answers, the witch told the boy she had lied to the mother about her child. The boy disappeared, and the mother was beautiful again.
Ethan, the point of life is not to rock the boat. Just try to get along. Stop living in your head. Do something real. That's what people respond to. Reality.
So we'll get another achievement for that. And something about that story in particular feels very heartbreaking to me, because this is clearly how Ethan probably sees his own mother. He probably sees himself as maybe a mistake or someone who ruined his mother's life. He has a bit of a tumultuous relationship with her, to say the least. We haven't seen her yet, but we will soon, and we'll learn a bit more about that. We actually have a note from her right here. Ethan, honey, I'm sorry I yelled at you. I want you to keep this note and read it every time I lose my temper. I don't mean it. And no, I got a snake's tongue. You're my little guy, my precious bean. You just gotta pull your head out of them clouds, okay? Nobody in Ethan's family seems to appreciate how creative he is and how he writes little stories about them. He really just seems like a nuisance, and that is probably how he feels. And his stories are so creative and have a ring of authenticity to how his family treats him and his perception of them. And he's so young. I don't know how old he is, but he's probably only, 12 or 13 years old. Now we've come across a church here, and I'm going to ignore this path that goes up past the church, because all this is going to do is loop back down to the bottom eventually. But there really isn't anything up there. I think we might get a dialogue line or two from Paul if we were to go that way. But it is much faster to just backtrack the way that we came when I'm done. So we have this big, beautiful church here. And if we come into the area with all of the mausoleums, you'll start seeing inspection points, which tells you that there is going to be another death to investigate in this area. I think this is probably one of the most missable ones. We're going to need to go inside the church in order to find that oil lamp, which we will do shortly. But this church area is kind of out of the way if you're not doing a lot of exploration. There's also some dead crows here and a lot of blood. So now we're kind of questioning if there is a supernatural element to this. They have mentioned this entity called the Sleeper. And so maybe there is some aspect here that isn't quite human at play. Maybe the family members are being possessed. Maybe there's some sort of ancient evil. And this, in fact, is the Vandegrift tomb. And I looked up the inscription that is on the outside of this crypt, and it's a Latin term. And it kind of roughly translates to "Death will not strip us of our bond," or "Death does not tear us apart." And I think that's a little bit symbolic about what's going on with the family, because we're coming across dead family members here, but how much is it going to take in order for the sleeper to be stopped? Is death really going to be enough? I don't know. We'll see. On the side of this tomb here, there is also an inscription. It looks dark magic, witchcraft. I don't know. But it's been written in blood, which is never a great sign. And unfortunately, it is too dark in this crypt to investigate the body that's hiding in here. But if you inspect the handle near the wall, this will show us where in the graveyard we can go to find the other piece of this handle that we need. There is a large statue in the background there, which is a great landmark. That crow statue is a little bit difficult to find, so hopefully I'll be able to find it without looking around too much. And as we continue on this way, we'll find our next clue. We have some more blood here, but it's not as big of a blood stain as the one that we saw with Travis. It's more localized. You can see that there are several pairs of footprints in the blood as well. So definitely a bit more of a localized struggle. And we can see that statue, that big statue in the background. So we just need to kind of keep our eyes out for the little crow statue that we're looking for, which is right here. And our very last clue is going to be inside of the church, where that oil lamp is waiting for us. We've seen a fair bit of Latin inscriptions on some of the tombs and mausoleums around here, but this one is interesting because it's written in German, and it roughly translates to "Rest in God, my dear wife." So there's kind of a mix of some different languages. I love just noticing little details like that. I think it's neat. And fun fact, one of the quality of life upgrades that this game made in the Redux gave this church a little bit of lighting. Very, very faint lighting through the windows, but still lighting in here to make it a little bit easier to find the lantern, which is just going to be down this little hallway here. In the original game, it was pitch black in here, and it was very difficult to find your way around to find that lantern. Now, unfortunately, the lantern doesn't work, and there's not much else that we can see in this church. And we can now go back over by the mausoleum area here. We can light up the crypt and we can have a look. We can also put this oil lamp back, similar to what we did with the rock earlier. That is required to go back there in order to finish up this puzzle. We'll go ahead and put our crow back. And this will quite literally light up this tomb for us, and this will reveal the body of our next victim. I'm not sure if it's a good or a bad thing that it's lying on top of a Vandergriff tomb. But let's go ahead and pull out this dagger that is in the victim's chest. Looks very sharp and very deadly. But if we inspect the body, Paul is kind of questioning what the actual cause of death is, because there's minimum bleeding. He's not sure if there's a single attacker, if there's multiple attackers. It does look like this body was placed here after death. There is still quite a bit of blood. And there is also that inscription on the wall in here as well. So definitely feeling a little bit spooky and a little bit eerie. And as soon as we put this dagger back, we are ready to inspect the body and find out what the hell happened here. Was this a sacrifice of some sort? We are talking about this sleeper entity, and things are getting darker and darker and darker, it seems. So once again, multiple parties. It looks like there's 3 people involved. And it's kind of hard to tell by the facial expressions what's going on here. Is this person being coerced? They certainly look distraught. Are they being told to get inside the tomb? Right? Again, looking very distraught. 2-on-1. It looks like the other 2 people are on the same side. We can see a bit of a struggle here, which explains what happened with the bloodstain. And then the other 2 spirits in this area are over near the back of the church, which is interesting because we didn't have any real clues in this area. But it more or less shows our characters coming and going. And what's interesting is that Travis is in this scene, which means that this death would predate his. Even though Travis's was the first death that we saw, this one appears to have taken place first. Now this one is a little bit more difficult to solve because it's a little bit more up in the air for interpretation, I think. But seeing as how we didn't see Travis in any of the other scenes, he mostly showed up to the scene last. So our first going on is going to be these 2 people arriving on the scene. They come down here and they see what is going on. They meet person number 3. And it's kind of a toss-up as to whether this happens first or whether this happens first. But it looks like the third person that we run into, the victim, was trying to brick up this tomb. You can see the ghost brick and the wheelbarrow full of mortar and the bricks. So presumably, they saw him trying to brick up the tomb next. Maybe he got pulled away from it. That looks like it could be a bit of the start of an argument. They chased each other, which ended in the death of our victim. And then lastly, even though it's not in the sequence of events anywhere, we're assuming that the person was hidden inside of the crypt before Travis finally made his way to the scene to see what was going on. So let's see how this all played out, because I feel like this is missing a few gaps and is a little bit less obvious than what we saw with Travis.
Our boy. Chad is putting our boy in that crypt.
And bricking him up. Giving him to the sleeper. Forever.
You know he's harmless. You know this is wrong.
Chad, finish those bricks before he wakes up.
Ah, my eye!
Chad, let me see it.
Get the hell away from me! This is Dale's fault. He should have been helping.
Dale's weak. He always has been.
You're right. He is weak.
Chad, get off of him! He's your brother! Get off of him!
The hell's going on? Where's Ethan?
The one who sleeps must not sleep. Your Uncle Chad is dead. Rose. Ethan.
And there you have it. That seemed like a bit more of a power struggle and a bit more of a death out of self-defense.
It's not right. Ethan's our boy.
Dad, I need to get into the mine.
What? Mine? My key. I don't have it.
I guess I'll use the tunnel near the gate. Just keep Mom away from me, all right? She's sick. You're all sick.
But a murder's a murder, and there we go. We have solved the death of Chad.
The sleeper must not sleep. Ethan disturbed something. Whatever it was, it got out, into the air, and into the minds of his family.
Yeah, so Chad here was trying to basically bury Ethan alive in the old Vandergriff mausoleum, which just causes more questions than it gives me answers, because is this a Vandergriff curse that has now been passed on to the Carters because they are the last remaining family in Red Creek Valley? How does it pick its host? What is causing all of the family members to turn on Ethan? It kind of sounds like he was the one that maybe summoned or woke up this sleeper. But Ethan trusted his dad enough to be talking to him up close and personal as his dad had a dagger in his hand upon looking at his dead uncle here. So it looks like some members of the family are affected and some aren't. Travis was obviously more affected, and Ethan's mother and his uncle as well. But we've seen his grandfather, who helped him escape from Travis, and his father appeared to be on Ethan's side, right? He's an innocent little boy. I don't want him to bury our son alive. This is madness. So it has you asking a lot of questions about how this is going to play out, and thankfully Ethan is 2 for 0 so far. He has been able to escape from his family in both occasions that we've seen him, and that gives me hope. Now, you may have gotten a little bit more backstory on the family before visiting that murder scene if you had gone in this house first, because this is actually the Carters' house. I don't know how, because it does not look like it's been lived in for a very long time. The brick is in disrepair. The front door isn't even on properly, and if we go inside, we can see that it is full of broken furniture, and it's dusty and looks like it hasn't been lived in forever. Now, there is a photo here, and this is all of Ethan's family, all of whom we have met at this point. Ethan, his grandpa Ed, his brother Travis, his mother Missy, his father Dale, and his uncle Chad. And on the back of the photo, it describes a little bit about how the family was feeling on the day that the photo was taken. But now that we've met the family and we've seen and heard a little bit from each of them, it kind of feels like this is very much the default personality of a lot of the family, such as his mom being a very angry person. I quickly changed the settings before going any further because I realized how dark it's probably gonna look, and as we go through the house, it's really important that we be able to see things. I'm gonna be walking around the house. We're going to hear some of the conversations that the family would have had when they lived here, and this is just gonna give us a bit more of the story, and it's also gonna show us some more of the dynamic between all of the family members.
You can feel it, right? Something coming from the Vandergriff house.
I can feel it. Ethan disturbed the sleeper. He must be punished.
For such a big man, a big bully, Chad legitimately sounded terrified there. And we saw what happened to him, so I guess he maybe had some reason to be afraid.
What did you do? What did you wake up?
Nothing. I found a room, I walked into it, that's it.
And his mother is perhaps the most insistent that this is Ethan's fault, which is unusual. It's very unusual that you have a mother who doesn't protect her son or even give him the benefit of the doubt, but she just seems to be so angry all the time.
You need to talk to your son. He was poking around in the old Vandergriff house again. Said he found some secret room.
Yeah, really? Okay, I will go talk to him.
Now, if he's unleashed some sort of unspeakable evil upon your family, well then yes, of course, you're gonna be angry, but it's just very interesting to me. I like going through the house because it just really fills in some of the gaps.
Pop, they're getting worse. They keep talking about this thing, this sleeper.
I know. What I don't know is if it's real or not.
Fascinating that the family is almost split into two camps. You have Ethan in the middle. He's sort of the catalyst, whether or not he's to blame for letting out this sleeper. He swears up and down that he isn't, but his mother, his brother, and his uncle don't believe him. But his dad and his grandfather are willing to go to bat for him. And I love that Ed is even questioning the legitimacy of the sleeper. He's even asking himself if this is even real or if this is just something else that is going on. I also keep seeing this symbol in the house. We saw it downstairs and we're seeing it here as well. And I'm trying to remember if we saw it up by the graveyard or if that was a different sort of a symbol.
Travis, leave the boy alone. I see how you've been looking at him.
You don't even know, do you? You have no idea what's going on.
And once again, we have Ed, who continues to defend Ethan, and I'm so glad that there's at least some of the family members who are on his side, because as you learn more and more about what he's going through, you just feel so badly for him.
You have to help us. It's the only way. It wants Ethan.
You're crazy. You've all gone crazy.
And I have to give Dale some credit, because he really seems like he's the type of person who normally gets pushed around and just does what other people tell him to do, but he is very much still on Ethan's side. We saw that in the graveyard, and we're seeing that here, where he keeps trying to convince the other members of the family that this is wrong, this is crazy, this isn't you, we wouldn't normally do this. And the sleeper seems to have hold of the family members with the stronger personalities, the more louder, the more mean, the more angry family members. So I wonder if it feeds on negativity, or if it can maybe sense those traits in a way, because Ed is described as being very quiet and Dale is described as being very sad. So I think they're more submissive and non-threatening.
It's not my fault. I didn't mean for any of this to happen.
Ethan's family blamed him. Whatever it was he'd accidentally let loose, his family was convinced that hurting him would solve their problems, would soothe their disturbed minds. Whatever haunted the Carters was still here somewhere, in the wind.
Yeah, very disturbing stuff. As soon as you've explored the whole house and you have heard all the dialogue and you get Paul's final thoughts, you will pop an achievement for going through here. And I like to think that Ethan would have come up to the attic for some peace and quiet, because we see quite a few books scattered, and there's also this nice desk which looks like it could also be a really nice surface for his writing, perhaps. But he's got the classics. He's got some Jules Verne here, Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson, some Mark Twain, H.P. Lovecraft, H.C. Wells, and he also has some Edgar Allan Poe as well. And Ethan himself is a very, very sensitive boy, very creative, and very much already picked on and ridiculed by his family. So maybe the sleeper wanted nothing to do with him. There's still a lot of questions and theories kind of floating around, but I do like that we are getting some backstory. And it's a great opportunity to hear from all of the members of the family. One of the things that I wish is that while we were going through the house, that we could have seen those more supernatural cutscenes play out, and we could have seen how those conversations might have actually played out using the ghosts that we get during the murder investigations. And I think it would have been very, very neat to see how this house would have looked in its former glory, because as you go through the house, it is very, very hard to figure out exactly what it would have looked like, because this is a huge, huge home, and they are also a very large family. So you would think that everybody would need their own room, and you would have all the other standard rooms that you would have in a home, but the layout just doesn't make a lot of sense, because it's mostly just full of garbage and has very much been abandoned. I think that would have really been the cherry on top of the sundae. But moving on, we're now crossing over to this house, the other home that we skipped earlier. And this house has a spectacular view. Maybe not if you have a fear of heights, but just wow. Just look at what you would be looking out from overlooking that balcony. I mean, just incredible. And this is another house that I can only sort of guess about, but I have a feeling that this would have been a home owned by either the Vandergriffs, just another home that they owned, or perhaps another house that was built in Red Creek Valley for a family that was perhaps more rich or more famous. Maybe it's like the Vandergriffs' ancestors or something, because you have these plaques on the outside of the house. This one up here kind of almost looks like some family arms, but it's really hard to tell, and that's as far as I can zoom in on it. But just the architecture, even though it's a smaller house, it just looks a little bit more fancy, a little bit more upscale. And if we go inside, this is also very clearly abandoned, and there's not much in here to speak of, but there is a piece of paper here that we can read. And this is interesting because this is clearly not something that has been written by Ethan, as it has been typed out on a typewriter. I invoke the Boneless One, the one of voids, destroyer of ships, and he who is feared by the winds. Hear me. Great Minister Focalar, I wish to make a pact with you to confound my enemies and protect my possessions. Use the doors of confusion to cloud their judgment. Seal the path with falsity and guile, and permit only those who can discern every true interior to pass. And then this final passage, which I'm not reading out loud, is because it is complete nonsense. It's not a real language, it's just something that has been made up using a mash of other languages. But it's interesting because you look at that and you think it could very well be a real language, and perhaps in this game's lore, this game's universe, perhaps that is something that is an actual language, and it has something to do with this sleeper or the darkness that we're seeing in this area, because there was a lot of ritual type stuff over by the church as well. Food for thought. And once you're done reading that and you put the letter down, we are going to have to walk through this house and recreate the exact layout of Ethan's house. And this is why I said to pay attention as you move through this house, because you have to recreate every single area of the house perfectly. If you mess up, you just have to restart. So you will walk up to one of the blue portals and you can swap the rooms until you get the right one. Fortunately, this one here is defaulted to the correct one. This is a dining room ? We see a lot of the same furniture, like tables and chairs and dressers, but I still have a difficult time making sense of any of it. Once you have the correct room, the portal will be blue as you walk through it, and then the room will be finalized and you won't be able to make any changes. The bottom half of the house on the right hand side here is mostly just junk. There's not much here. This is the correct tile, and you can also cheat a little bit because you can zoom in, and if I look ahead of me, this will actually give me a bit of a hint for when I go to put that room in. So for example, we walk forward, we know that this is the correct room, and I was able to see this table very clearly with this window. And there is no dialogue as we move through here. Unfortunately, this is just recreating Ethan's home. We won't get any more dialogue. We won't hear any other dialogue. The first floor is now complete, so we can move on to the second floor. To the left of the stairs, this was like a really big sort of living room area. Again, lots of desks and chairs, but no bedrooms or anything that I would expect to see in such a large home. And then this room that connects here always kind of trips me up because I always want to say that it's going back to the stairs, but not quite. It's this room here. There's a little side table over by the window, and then we reconnect and we go back to the stairs. And then the right hand side here is a hallway, and this has a bedroom. This is the most bedroom looking area in the whole house. Maybe Travis's bedroom, because we heard him talk in here. And then straight down the hallway is just another big open room. And this one doesn't have a lot of detail when you first look, but I like to remember this one by the big red overturned chair. It isn't until you turn the corner that you remember that this is a very, very large room, once again with another dining table kind of similar to downstairs. And the very last room is probably the easiest, the most obvious, and that would be the attic, where we finished our tour of the Carter's home, where we saw all of the different books. You can also do this in any order, but I would sort of recommend working bottom to top if you can. And once you've filled out all of the rooms and you've done everything correctly, you will find a secret room that we didn't see before. And I like the look of this room, but it's clearly not rooted in reality. So we have another one of Ethan's stories to read here. Another one without a title. A magician once lived inside an old house and made potions that let him see the future. People from the village came to the magician's house and demanded he share his potions with them. We want to see the future too, they told him, but the magician said no. The people from the village grew angry and burned the magician's house. But the magician knew that this would happen. He had already cast a spell on his potion room. The house burned, but the room did not. The people from the valley waited, but the magician never came out.
Why are you standing there? You spying?
No?
No, huh? What the hell's wrong with you exactly?
Nothing.
You need to stop leaving your stupid stories around. They're freaking everyone out.
So instead of a secret magical room, we instead see that there is a hidden room upstairs, disguised in this wardrobe as an illegal alcohol still. So we have a newspaper to read. This is another one that is double-sided. So the first half of this is going to talk about a fire that broke out in relation to this moonshine operation. In Bayfield County, Ashland Township volunteer firefighters discovered an apparent moonshine still while battling a blaze in the woods off Old Ogden Road. According to authorities, the still comprised a propane stove and 4-gallon stainless steel pot, which was used to hold the whiskey mash. Based on the size of the still, Bayfield County Sheriff Hank Schafel believes it may be part of a small operation, though he admitted there could be other stills in the county. Officers on the scene recovered a half-gallon of apple pie moonshine and 1 gallon of unflavored moonshine. Apple cider and cinnamon sticks were found adjacent to the still. The police have been unable to determine who owns the still. And then for some reason, it gets cut off, but there is an important detail at the very end that you can see on the actual paper, which says that a cigarette butt tossed at the scene was likely the cause of the fire. And then the other side is one of these articles that helps you to sort of piece the timeline together of this game. This is about NASA launching one of its satellites, and this is a real life event. This is something that happened. This is a real satellite. I don't remember exactly what year this was, but it would have been in the early 1970s. And I think that this discovery of the still and this newspaper article is really telling because it sort of has a link to Ethan's grandfather in a way. Now, I believe because this is the only place besides Ethan's home that we have much to do with Chad outside of his death. So this was most likely Chad's still, and it sounds like they weren't ever able to discover this, and it remained hidden. But if we were to go back to the Traps and Skulls area where we started out, and we had a look at the area in the woods where Ed was out drinking, he also has a pack of cigarettes out there. And in the article talking about the fire that killed his wife, that was also started by a cigarette. Aha! So I like to think when I read this paper that Ed was out in the woods drinking in his normal spot, and in his carelessness, he dropped a cigarette. Maybe he fell asleep. Maybe there was some alcohol involved that would have made the fire worse. But I think that Ed would have caused this little forest fire that they were trying to put out. And it's kind of unclear, and it's up to interpretation if Chad was doing this alone, if this was just something that the family kept for themselves, whether this was something that they were selling. You know, this is a pretty rural and remote area. I imagine that you could sell it to people and kind of keep it hush-hush. And imagine trying to find stills in a county this big that's so rural and remote. But I like to think that Ed at least knew about the still, probably just turned a blind eye, especially if Chad was giving his dad alcohol because he is a bit of an alcoholic. And in hindsight, now that I've played in this order this time around, it would probably have made more sense for me to do these houses first and then investigate Chad's death, because we're getting some details about Chad after his death that might have made the scene of his investigation a little bit more profound or a little bit more interesting. But to be fair, we did find Travis very, very early on. He was the first person that we found, and we are still seeing traces of him elsewhere. Probably my favorite area of the game because this is just so incredibly lore heavy. But for now, we are done in this area, and we can move on. One more thing I want to point out, in between the two houses there is a path that goes a little bit further into the woods, and there is a lift here. Now unfortunately the lift is at the very bottom, and the button to bring this up is not working. It would have been absolutely fantastic if we were able to just shortcut this next section and make it down here, which is ultimately where we are heading to go. But that is not going to be allowable for us to do. We can use the lift if we're at the bottom, But unfortunately, we are going to have to take the long way around. And when Ethan was talking to his father, he was talking about going through the mines. And so that is where we are headed next. And so we're just going to continue following the path here. Process of elimination, just keep going in the direction that we have yet to go.
I've stepped through too many portals, been present in too many worlds simultaneously. Bits and pieces of me stay on the other side, waiting. Whenever I return, I bring parts of those worlds back. Do you know what ghosts are? They're sad, evicted things. Memories without homes.
Wow, Paul. Way to get depressing and philosophical on us. But if you could see ghosts, you would be able to probably see how that ghost is behaving and how it feels, as we have been able to do in the game so far. And this little path that is coming down to meet the main road, this is where the path from the top of the church would have come into, the one that I had mentioned skipping. Again, if you want a little bit of additional dialogue, or you just feel like taking a stroll, or if you did the houses first and you skipped the church, this would probably be a good way to just go back up and backtrack. It all connects, thankfully. Makes it very difficult to get lost. And I am going to just continue on the main road here, passing by this little tower. And what I find interesting, now this never used to do this from what I remember, and this is a fresh, clean save, because you can see the achievements popping as I'm going, but we can see the big enter up there in the background, telling us where to go. And I distinctly remember having to kind of feel my way around looking for the entrance into the mine before, because the door is locked. Ethan's dad said he didn't have his key on him, and so we're gonna have to follow Ethan and take the same way that he would have gone. Which is to just squeeze in through those rocks over there. The game practically gives that away, so it's interesting. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's always been like that, but I really vaguely remember them making you kind of look for it. And once you squeeze through these rocks, don't worry. If you need to, you can crawl back and go back for anything that you need to. But I would recommend moving forward for now, because there will be a chance to backtrack and to reach anything that you've missed in the previous areas so far at a later date. So we've just bypassed the front entrance to the mine, and we know that we're on the right track, and hopefully Ethan is okay and he's made it to his next destination. So far he's been very good about escaping from his family. And at the rate that his family are dropping like flies, there's not going to be that many of them left. You're going to want to get inside of the elevator when you see it, and don't do what I did. Don't press the button to go down before you step inside, because if you do that, you're going to have to wait for it to go all the way back down and then come all the way back up. Which probably seems extremely obvious, but I guess that my brain just saw the big writing and said, ooh, shiny, and pushed it without much thought. Now, the mines are probably my least favorite part of the game, just because it's so dark and boring out here. I'm so used to the beautiful nature of the valley that coming in here is just not a lot to see. But his dad said he had a key, and it seems like, based upon the fact that these lights are on, that his dad, at the very least, and maybe other members of the family, do at least walk through these mines at times. But I imagine that the mine isn't in operation. Like, I do imagine they don't actually work in here. Because the patriarch Vandergriff died all the way back in 1961. He had a mining accident. And ever since then, the property has just fallen into disarray. And when we get into this big circular lit up room here, this is going to be our next murder investigation. And we can start by looking at the empty pickaxe slot on the rack here. And we're going to be able to find the pickaxe further on down in the tunnel, but we're going to have to find a way to light that tunnel up first because it is extremely dark down there. And we can see that there is an elevator here, and we can bring this up from the water, and that will give us the corpse of Ethan's mother. The lock has been broken from the outside, and Paul is still trying to piece together whether drowning was the cause of death or whether she would have died first and then been placed in the water as a secondary sort of way to hide the corpse. Now we're going to find that out soon enough. Instead of going down the very long tunnel here, we're going to veer off to the right. And fortunately, this cart here is fully operational and running. Again, another very old piece of machinery. This is also probably from like the 40s or 50s, since it was being used in the 60s and probably wasn't new at that time. We're gonna back up, get some momentum, slam into those rocks, and we need to light up the very, very, very long tunnel in order to be able to find that pickaxe. So we have to drive it all the way around the center of the room, and then the pickaxe will come into view not too far down the tunnel. It looks like it was put into a fuse box of some sort. And believe it or not, very, very few clues in this one, but that is all we need for this investigation. I could run back at this point, but I'm gonna just use the car and just back up a little bit here and get closer to the murder scene. We just have to put that pickaxe back in its spot. And then we're gonna be able to touch Missy's body here and figure out what exactly happened to her. So this is another one with very, very few clues. And the next couple of deaths, I think after Chad, they get much, much easier to solve. There's only a few clues for us here. The first is at the very, very start of the tunnel. We have the pickaxe rack. We have Missy inside the elevator. Ooh, Dale at the controls. And then we have Dale walking away with the pickaxe. So this one mostly happens in the order that you find the clues. Missy and Dale enter the tunnel, presumably on the hunt for Ethan. Dale probably cracked and told Missy where he was headed. He seems to be able to be very easily controlled by his wife. Missy would have gotten inside of the elevator. You have Dale here standing on the outside controlling the elevator. Something presumably goes wrong. He grabs the pickaxe and then he walks away with it. Alright, let's see how this plays out.
Honey, he probably ran. Well, why wouldn't he? Why would he be here? Shit. That was probably a raccoon.
No, I don't think it was.
In a mine?
He's just a kid. He didn't disturb anything. He just found a room in an old house. That's it!
Our boy is the price. I'm going up there. The sleeper must not sleep. He can't get away. It's the sleeper's time to awake.
Missy, listen to yourself.
No, I see clearly. The sleeper breathes inside me.
You're sick. We all are.
Dale, what are you doing? Dale! Dale, what is this?
I'm fixing something.
Dale, you miserable coward! Let me out! The sleeper demands to rise! The sleeper must wake up! The sleeper must wake up! The sleeper must...
Well, damn. That death, I think you can almost question whether that was Dale temporarily under the influence of the sleeper. He did sort of sound like he was in a bit of a trance when he said, "I'm fixing something." Or whether that was him just finally snapping and he's had enough. He's just finally succumbed to a very overbearing, domineering wife, and perhaps he saw this as the perfect opportunity to protect Ethan once and for all from one more family member going on and on and on about this sleeper.
Where's Mom? I thought I heard her voice.
She's, still looking for you. You need to leave. Go through there.
Through that water? It kind of looks like it's boiling.
No, it's just a simple chemical reaction. It's not actually boiling.
Mom! Mom! Where are you?
I'll deal with your brothers. Go, now.
So there's another achievement for solving Missy's death.
He didn't kill his wife. She was no longer who she once was. Neither was he. Something was using all this pain and death. Something was becoming stronger.
And once again, we hear Travis's voice coming towards us. And he seemed to sort of be following his mother as she was pursuing Ethan. So I have a feeling that this would have happened shortly after Chad's death. Either Dale told them where Ethan was headed, or they just guessed that that was the next logical place that he would go. Somewhere along the way, Ethan picked up some jerry cans. Not sure where he would have got them from, but he had a plan with those. And on the left are going to be some lit up areas. The first one that you come across is going to be another one of our side stories. And this one I think is perhaps the most challenging. And it's pretty unique because it starts to really integrate the first real tangible danger that we've come across in the game so far. We're not actually in danger, but it's going to sort of feel like a threat as we move on through this area. You go down a gajillion stairs, and then there is a note on the outside of this entranceway. If this warning stands, walk no further. If this warning stands, our ritual failed. If this warning stands, the Seething Gate remains sealed. Ooh, scary. Alright. So, this is a maze that we are going to have to bring ourselves through. And as we make our way through this maze, there's going to be this sort of undead creature roaming around. He kind of looks like a zombie. And he's got a lantern. Now the lantern makes a very loud creaking noise. You'll see the light. And if you see or hear this creature, which is just coming around the corner now, you're going to want to get away as far as you possibly can. He may have actually seen me. Oh, no, he didn't. All that's going to happen if he catches you is you're going to get a jump scare, and he's going to send you back to the beginning of the maze. So you want to avoid him at all costs. And there are lots of little nooks and crannies to hide in. As long as you break line of sight, it's pretty generous with him not being able to catch you. And as we go through this maze, we are going to be looking for 2 bodies. When we come to this first map, we're going to continue on and slightly to the left. And once we reach this map here, we're facing the back of it, we'll see our first body to the left. Now I'm going to backtrack slightly. Go back to this map and now face it. And head left towards the next map. I'm also going to head slightly left. There's a lot of lefts. Follow the path. Oh, back it up, back it up, back it up, back it up. Hopefully he didn't see us. We're going to wait for the lantern sound to grow distant. His face would have popped up if he saw me by now, so that's good news. And then from where this map is, the next body is straight in front of us. And then from here, we just have to basically continue on straight. We're going to stay on the outside of this maze. You can see we're almost going into the inner part of it. We're actually going to follow the spirit. You can follow this to where it's headed into the inner portion of the maze. This brings us to our third and final body that we needed to find. And there's also a little poem here next to our final corpse. He is not dead, but eternal lie. The god of strange aeons cannot die. We open the gate of old. Its guardian eyes have long grown cold. The name of our God, our truth, our key. He is that which is, which should not be. And then what you'll notice on the very, very top of the note are these 2 symbols with a section in the middle that has been sort of burnt out. Now that is going to be our code for the puzzle that's required to solve. Right up in front of us, there's a giant gate with multiple rings. And our 3 bodies that we found in the tomb are the missing 3 symbols that we need. So when you're ready to try and solve this, you can walk up to the gate and try and manipulate the rings. And we know the first and the last symbol from looking at the paper, so that is a good place to start. In order to find the other clues, you would just simply look around the maze and match up the symbols. The red portion are the symbols that we're trying to match, and then the blue symbols are where our little ghosts are standing. So this one is a little bit more involved than most of our puzzles in the game so far. Some of these symbols also look really, really similar. So if there's one you're not sure of, try and get the ones that you are sure of and then come back to it. Like these 2 symbols, symbols 2 and 3, look really, really similar. The 2 middle symbols are the same. They are both that Z-shaped looking one. And then our final symbol is the sort of ram horn looking one. And once you've done it correctly and you've lined everything up, we will be flooding this area. And there is that sea creature that the note warned us about in the beginning when we entered the maze, but don't worry, this is of course another one of Ethan's stories and we are in no danger. The next piece of paper is here. This one is called The Curse of the Sea Thing. The Enochian Necronomicon, the iron ore miners, had finally found it, but not all of them wanted to perform its ritual and summoned the sea thing Ganai. One miner realized the ritual would unleash Ganai's flood upon this world, and so the miner had no choice but to stab the others with blades, shards of magic Eltdown. Ganai, in response, cursed the miner, who now wanders the mine, doomed to prevent others from summoning the sea thing and flooding the world forever.
Ethan, I told you to stay out. God damn it. Look, it's dangerous in here. I'll read your story later. Okay? And, please don't tell your mother I'm in here. All right? Okay, now, you go. Get back home.
So that's it for that puzzle. Very involved. And we are rewarded with a few little scraps of paper here. The first one is a piece of paper from the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and this is addressed to Ethan's father. Dear Mr. Carter, the United States Patent and Trademark Office has received your January 27th, 1973 letter requesting further explanation as to why your recently submitted patent was rejected by this office. As we explained in our previous letter, the patent was rejected for infringing upon a previously existing patent. We have on record from you no more than 4 dozen requested patents submitted in the last 16 months. None has been successful and all have been met with challenges by you, Mr. Carter. We would like to consider this matter and future matters administratively closed. Now, this is one of the few pieces of paper that has a date on it. This is dated around 1973. This is in response to something that was submitted in 1973, so you know that this game takes place at least later on in the same year or a couple of years after that point. And here is another letter from Missy. Get your shit out of our basement. Bring it to the goddamn dump. I am so sick of stepping over your lifetime of failure on my way to the washing machine. I'm not kidding. Either you move it or I burn it. Lovely woman Mrs. Carter is. And you can see that this is locked now. We're not able to go to where we were earlier for our puzzle solving, but this is locked, and presumably his dad has the key. We can see that there are, you know, some boxes here. Maybe this is where his dad came to be alone. Maybe his dad is an inventor, or he has some other type of a job, like an engineer or something, where he has a lot of really good ideas, and he's probably kind of creative like how Ethan is, but clearly it isn't getting him anywhere. His wife is disappointed in him. He's seen as a bit of a failure, and nobody really seems to respect him. And that's probably part of why he's very sad. And we are pretty much ready to get out of here now. We're just gonna head towards the next little lit entrance, which is also the end of the tunnel. And Ethan mentioned when he was talking to his father about going through this boiling water, or this water that had appeared to be boiling, but it's just a chemical reaction and we are safe to cross. And this would get us out of the mines. And then we're headed towards the ending of the game. We're getting very close. There's not much more after this point. A little bit slow going here. This isn't an area that you can run through. We just have to kind of wade very, very slowly. Hopefully we can get back outside and dry ourselves off.
I could feel two kinds of darkness here in Red Creek Valley. The first you walked into, and with any luck, walked out of. But the other darkness was deeper, stickier, unknowable. And it wanted me to leave.
Yeah. By now, Paul must be getting a very clear picture that whether it's human evil or spirit evil, there is just a lot of evil in this place. And the mines, it looks like, were established all the way back in 1901. We are now down in this lower area that I've pointed out a few times from up above. There's our large bridge that we crossed. There's the house on the hill that had all the portals. I think it would be kind of scary to have your house on a hill like that at the very edge of a cliff, but I also think that it would be a spectacular view. Really reminds me of that house in Resident Evil Village that's kind of desolate, hanging on the edge of a cliff. So we have two more buildings in the area. We have this one here, and then we have this larger one in this direction. So we're gonna head in this direction first, and I'm not entirely sure what this building is considered. I think it's like a pump house. It would be used to control the dam. Has some sort of purpose here, but unfortunately there's not a lot that we can actually see in this structure. We can only go through the front door. Most of the windows are kind of boarded up. That's kind of my best guess. And immediately when we get inside, we will see that the axe is missing from the case. And that is going to be the first clue in our investigation. And this mystery takes place within a very, very small area. It's not even really worth discovering the clue of where the axe is, because we're going to find it laying in plain sight as we go up the stairs. But we will notice that the axe looks like it was used here to break down the door. Excessive force was used for one reason or another. And inside, we will find the axe next to the body of Ethan's father, who, of all the adults, maybe besides Ethan's grandfather, I was rooting for. He seemed to be fighting off the effects of the sleeper. He seemed to be helping Ethan. And we are missing something from this holder of utensils. We're gonna have to go outside to grab them. It is a bloody pair of scissors. Again, something I could have grabbed before coming in here to save a little bit of time. But there's not many clues to this death. These last few investigations are pretty easy to figure out. And the scissors are laying on a barrel that is located inside of the lift I talked about earlier. So here they are. And at this point, if you want to, you can in fact go back up. So if you missed investigating Chad's death, if you missed the witch story in the woods or the House of Portals, anything, at this point, feel free to go back up and fill your boots. But we are very close to the end of this game, and we will also have a method of fast traveling in the very near future. So it's completely up to you what it is that you would like to do. I, for one, am going to go back and finish up my investigation here. And fun fact, this would be the very first investigation of the deaths of Ethan's family that we found so far that is required for the story. So if you were skipping these for whatever reason or you missed them on your way through, this one is not one that you are able to skip. So I thought I would just point that out as we continue on here. So again, another sort of localized blood area. Now the axe was laying there, but we also have the scissors in play here. And the one thing I forgot to do was to put the axe back in its spot. I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, those are all the clues, I know they are. I've played this enough times, but I forgot to put the axe back. Now we should be able to figure out what happened. Here we go. Now we can find out what happened to poor Dale here. After all of the defending that he's done, trying to help poor Ethan and trying to deflate the situation and kind of getting pushed around by everybody. And we see Travis again. Well, look at that. There's obviously a bit of a scuffle here between Travis and his dad. We did hear Travis calling in the mines earlier. So Dale looked like he was trying to surprise him. And didn't work out so well in his favor by the very end here. And this one is just common sense. You just start from the entrance of the mine and follow it all the way to where he gets trapped. You basically just follow Dale's footsteps. So he starts with the axe, but he doesn't finish with it. So tries to unsuccessfully attack Travis. Somehow Travis gets a hold of the axe, and Travis is a much meaner, bolder, scarier type of a person. And I think after he lost that axe, all hope was really lost. Travis does not seem like the type of person that can be reasoned with. He might listen to his mother, because she's a very strong personality, but I don't imagine someone like Travis would really listen to his father or really respect him. And it just looks so menacing. He looks like he's very casual, calm, relaxed, and poor Dale here is obviously terrified, as you would be if someone was chasing after you with an axe, especially when your only weapon is a pair of scissors.
Where's my mother? Why are you standing in the sleeper's way?
She had an accident. Travis, put down the axe.
Oh, that was pitiful.
An accident.
I didn't want her to get hurt. We're all so sick, you know? Since Ethan found that room.
Where's Ethan, goddammit? Talk to me!
Okay, okay. He wants to burn Vandergrift's room. Look, Travis, just leave me alone. Oh God. Oh God.
The sleeper chooses vessels. You know that? To enact his wishes? He chose Mom. He chose me.
Son, I don't want to hurt you.
You think scissors are gonna save you?
Yes.
Ooh.
Didn't have to be this way. He could have helped the sleeper, helped us. But Mom's right. You're a coward, and you'll be meeting Ethan again soon.
Well, that is a first that we're seeing so far. I mean, Dale just seemed so genuinely terrified of everything. Scared of his wife, scared of his brother, scared of his son, scared of what has been going on with the sleeper, and terrified at the prospect of the sleeper coming in and possessing him too. And the way that he says his mom died in an accident makes me think that maybe Dale killed her of his own free will. And you'll want to follow the spirit into this building here. This door is now open, and we can view the final portion of this.
You disturbed it, not me.
Travis, we can get rid of it. I know exactly what we're up against. Don't listen to what's in your head.
This sleeper was feeding on them. Their hate, their distrust. Ethan's father figured suicide wouldn't feed it, but it did. I could feel it sitting somewhere out there, fat as a bullfrog, digesting.
It's been mentioned in the game that the sleeper demands sacrifice, and the sleeper seems to feast on pain and suffering, and so you would think that, yes, any death, no matter how it was caused, would contribute to the sleeper's strength, you know? In order to move on, we are going to have to close this valve. I don't know what this building would be called. This is like some sort of giant warehouse or machinery house. These big machines are going to control the flow of the dam. So the reason that Dale's death is mandatory in order to finish up the game is because this door is locked. And the only way that you're able to unlock this door is by solving his death. It magically opens up for you to walk through once you're following the spirit, and once you're back in reality, you'll have walked in and it was locked from the outside. And because Travis was present in this scene, it does make me think that Travis was probably one of the last family members to have died. And another good point to make is, where has Grandpa been? Because we saw Grandpa at the beginning when we encountered Travis, but he has not been present throughout chasing Ethan, or hasn't been involved in the death of his two sons or his daughter-in-law. So I wonder if Grandpa was kind of maybe staying out of this. He seems to know a bit more than the other family members about the sleeper. Maybe he's gone through this before. He's an older family member. He's lived in the valley for a longer period of time. Maybe this is not totally foreign to him. But at some point, I would like to think that Ethan made it here, and he took the lift up and went into the woods. I'm not sure why Ethan would have gone that way, but you can also remember that there was the jerry can full of gas near the train tracks, and Ethan was carrying those through the mining area. Now, when we just saw Ethan now, he didn't have the jerry cans in hand, but I'm just trying to make sense of the events and, you know, put everything together. It's an interesting sort of timeline to try and piece together. I love the sound of this rushing water. And once you have turned the valve, it will change things enough so that you can actually walk across this. And we are going to be moving to our final area of the game, which is the very infamous, very much talked about Vandergriff house. Every single member of Ethan's family is dead at this point, except for his grandfather and him. Those are the only two people we have not yet found.
Ethan was close. I could feel him. A pinprick of light in the darkness. He would know me. He would know why I'd come.
Well, God, I hope it's not too late. I hope the sleeper hasn't gotten hold of him. And as you open up into this valley, you just get this absolutely breathtaking view. There's nothing else around. It's like a little bowl. You're kind of nestled in this little valley, surrounded by mountains and all of this just spectacular nature. But unfortunately, we have more wreckage and more carnage in front of us. Here is the Vandergriff house. This is apparently where Ethan found the sleeper, and we know that he was on his way to destroy the room where he had originally unleashed the sleeper. And the fire looks recent-ish. It's been put out, but there are still some smolders here. And this is a secret entrance. We can actually see there's a little door here with some markings. And then there is a little panel here on the ground.
Then fight it! I have to destroy the room!
Corvus, I'm sorry. Ethan, I can't let you do that.
Now, you don't even need to match up Corvus in this puzzle. All you have to do is spell Corvus, and you're gonna start with this letter here, which is kind of attached to the central point. Grandpa kind of gave us the answer to this puzzle. This is the second or third time that Corvus has been mentioned, so perhaps that is another entity that is connected to the sleeper. But there is a secret room, all right. There's another corpse here. And apparently some corpses that are also stuck in the wall, which is so creepy and unsettling, and once again just tells you that something isn't quite right with the Vandergriffs and the Carters and Red Creek Valley. And yeah, maybe there is the sleeper out there who is looking for more sacrifices, perhaps, because these definitely look like real people. And Paul is having a difficult time getting a read on this body. They've clearly died in a fire, but they're not in a pose that you would expect somebody to be in if they've died by a fire. They look almost peaceful, like they have resigned themselves to the fact that they're just going to burn to death, which is pretty horrible. There's a few notes here. This one says, I am not myself, have not been myself. Voices again today, same as yesterday. This is most vexum. You know you're in trouble when you hear voices. I tried to brick her up in the wall, but she fought me. In the end, I couldn't do it. Not to my wife, nor she, nor the sleeper is pleased. Now I must decide whom I fear more. Breaking up in the wall? Does that sound familiar? If these are notes written by Ethan's grandfather, it's entirely possible that his grandmother was a sacrifice to the sleeper, and it was designed so that it looked like she died in a fire. So maybe history is repeating itself here. What I must do is clear to me now. The sleeper resides in a prison of death, and pain is the key. So the more suffering, the more death that occurs, the stronger the sleeper seems to get. All you have to do is look at those 3 scraps of paper and touch the corpse. And this is kind of nice because we do see this room restored to its former glory. And you can see here that Ethan and his grandfather are together, and it looks like, fortunately, Ed has been able to fight off the sleeper's advances and help Ethan out. This definitely looks like a collaboration. And he helped him get into the secret room, it looks like. But he was left on the other side of the door. So this is another one that just goes in order. They walk in, Ethan shows him something at the table, they try to get the door open, and once Ethan is on the other side, Grandpa just sits here and waits for death.
Ethan, I fought it off. It's okay.
Grandpa, get away from me!
Your grandmother, Gail, is protecting me from it. Ethan, I can help you.
I found Vandergrift's diary. He said for the sleeper to wake up, someone has to suffer. Look! When I found that room, I didn't wake him up. He's trying to wake up now. Vandergrift kept his victims alive. He made them suffer. That's what the sleeper wants.
We need to get in that room.
can squeeze through. Grandpa, no!
Gale, it has to be this way. The sleeper must not wake. Burning the room won't matter, Ethan. The sleeper's inside us now.
Grandpa! Get back!
We all have to die. Even you. Even me.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, Ethan made it. He got to where he needed to go. He managed to escape his family trying to hunt him down, and the sleeper was clever because, by the sounds of it, it hadn't yet woken up, but it had convinced everybody in the family except for Ethan that it had. When in fact, the family's actions were causing the sleeper to wake up from its slumber. And, oh, thank God. Hey, buddy.
Ethan, wake up. No, kid. You stopped it. It was hard, but you stopped it.
Paul Prospero? Are you really
I'm
here?
sorry, Ethan. I was late. Too late.
You're right. You were too late.
Yeah.
Here. Again. I knew this story. And it was Ethan's as much as it was mine. And it wasn't finished. Not yet.
It was not gonna be that easy to just find him and for everything to have a happy ending. But we do know that Ethan was here. He did make it. Now, Ethan has also spent a lot of time in this room. You can see that he has drawn an entire map of Red Creek Valley. He's laid out everything nicely for us, and all of our side stories are depicted on the wall. Starting at the Traps and Skulls and moving on through to the space capsule, the House of Portals, the Witch Forest, into the Ancient God story, in the mine, and then coming out and finding the whole map here. If at this point you have not gotten any of these side stories, you will be required to do that in order to see the game's ending. But because all of ours are crossed out, we can go ahead and do that now without any backtracking. But as you can see, we are able to fast travel to any of these locations, which makes it really, really easy to get anywhere that you need to get in Red Creek Valley to do any kind of backtracking whatsoever. But I need to see how this ends.
Christ, Ethan, you're in here again? You missed dinner. Mom and Dad are pissed. They've been looking all over the place.
Get out of here, Travis. Leave me alone.
Hey, Ma, he's in here.
Honey, be careful with that lamp.
Dale, the hell's wrong with your kid? Painting on walls, writing his stories. I mean, what the fuck?
Ethan! For God's sake, you missed dinner.
I'm sorry. I've been working on a story all day. How long have I been out
The
here?
Adventures of Paul Prospero, supernatural detective. Where do you get this stuff?
Pop, would you get Travis out of here, please?
He draws pictures on walls. What the hell is that?
Chad, shut up.
You got yourself a faggot for a son, Dale.
Travis, let's go. Come on.
Faggot! Ethan, you're a fucking faggot!
Travis, stop it! Oh, shit.
Shit!
Everyone, go! Get out!
Get out! The smoke, it's toxic! Jesus.
Oh God! What do we do? What do we do?
So we can see Ethan looking at the photo of Paul, his detective character that he's drawn on the wall.
I wrote about you, but I don't know if I created you.
You made me real.
I can't go yet. I have to finish my story about you. I wrote stories about everyone.
I know you did. But my story's done. And it's a fine story.
I can let go?
You can let go.
What happens then?
Another story, kid. What else?
So Ethan lays down at 7 p.m. with the thoughts of a supernatural detective character in his mind. And from 7:01 to 7:04, as he slowly lays dying of smoke inhalation, he is thinking about Paul coming to the rescue, this hero who is going to save him. As the fire rages on, so Paul was never real. That's the big plot twist. And Ethan's family have obviously realized the huge mistake that they've made. And even though they treated Ethan very poorly throughout his life, you could see that they are absolutely devastated once they realized what they've done. You can see that Travis even had the foresight to go and get the fire axe, and he might have even gone in to try and save Ethan because his jacket is on fire. And I like to think that this is Ethan's spirit sort of leaving his body as he dies, and the last thing he sees is his family showing up for him in a way that they never did when he was alive. Paul has told him that he can let go. The story is finished. And that is the ending. Whew. So sad. That ending is purely my own interpretation. Even though this game has been out for over a decade, the developers have made it extremely clear, even through a blog post that they did, that the ending of the game is up to the player. And I became very obsessed with this game when I finished it, and I went very, very deep into the rabbit hole to get people's thoughts about what the ending of this game really means. We all know that Paul is fake. We all assume that Ethan perished in the fire, but there are a lot of things that are left entirely up to interpretation. So even though this game is extremely simplistic in its gameplay and it's very quick, once you play this through and you get the ending and you realize what is going on, you can go back through the game with a fresh set of eyes and you'll notice things that you've never seen before. And people have some far-ranging theories about the game's story and about the symbolism, and people have pointed out little things that I never even noticed when I played this. So this is a game that has a lot of replay value if you're the type of person that likes to go and look at things through a microscope. Now that you know the twist, you can kind of go back and ask yourself some questions and fill in some gaps about some of the other events of the game. Such a tragically sad game. Very sad that we were not able to help Ethan because we're not a real person. And just very sad in general that his family cared so little about him and only cared when it was already too late. And at this point, we have gotten most of the achievements in the game. I'm going to go back in and grab the last 2 that are remaining. We can wrap this up and call it 100%, and now that the twist has been revealed, I can talk about a few things without spoilers. So if you continue after you have watched the game's credits, if there are any investigations that you missed that were not essential to the story, then this would be the time to do it. I am going to go all the way back to the very beginning of the game to the traps and skulls. Fun fact, the Redux version of the game adds these portals in. They were not in the original version of the game, which meant that you would have to backtrack from that final area on foot. So this makes it much, much more accessible. And there is an achievement that we could have gotten right straight out of the gate when we first entered the game, before we even took another step inside of Red Creek Valley. And that is to try and go back into the train tunnel towards the light. The reason I didn't do this at the beginning was because there were a few people when I was reading fan theories about this game who immediately, straight off the bat, walking through this tunnel and walking towards the light, were able to see the symbolism, and I guess it kind of ruined the twist for them. I was not one of those people, but I didn't want to take the risk, especially since I knew it would be very, very easy for us to go back and do this at a later date. There is no going back. And once you come out the other side, back into the valley, you will get that achievement. But now that we know that Paul isn't real, there are a lot of things that make sense. How he was able to find Red Creek Valley when there appear to be no telephones, no ways to get transportation into the area. It also makes sense now why he's a supernatural detective, because that is how Ethan wrote him. He also has infinite stamina. And these are all just little observations that you'll make now that you have played the game and have realized the twist. And as I head forward here, I am going to be working towards the very last achievement in the game. So there is a purpose for me doing this and not taking the portal back. We need to go past the train car. And now you have to ask yourself the question of, are Ethan's family members really dead? Ethan was never running from them to begin with. And I don't think the sleeper was real. I think the sleeper was something that was made up by Ethan. It was an entity for Paul to chase as he was chasing Ethan. It was something to explain why the family members were all after him. When in fact, I think that the sleeper is very symbolic. I think it could literally mean Ethan is sleeping and he's slowly dying of toxic smoke inhalation. And it could just be a figment of his imagination. It could be just this evil entity that explains why his family hates him, or why he perceives that they hate him. we're gonna go past where we found the bloody rock and into the woods. Because a lot of the stories that we found, I believe, are real stories that were written by Ethan, and I think that is why they are the required key element that you need to grab in order to finish up the story. Because Ethan was trying to reach out and tell a story to Paul, his imaginary character. Once we get to the very top of this hill, there's a pine cone that we're going to pick up, which turns into a grenade. But the interesting thing is, if you didn't guess the plot twist by the time you got to the end, the deaths are also told in a way that kind of makes sense. If we're following the deaths of his family and say we didn't know about the twist, and we were just following what happens to the family, I would like to think that his grandfather was in the woods drinking over in his secret spot with all of the alcohol. He was away from the family, keeping to himself. And maybe as Ethan was being tied up on the tracks, he heard him calling out for help. And he came in to help Ethan get away from Travis. But this would have already been after all of the other members of the family were dead. And again, that would explain the jerry can, because why else was it here? It is used as a piece of the puzzle when you solve Travis's death, but it has absolutely nothing to do with this murder whatsoever. So that is kind of a logical reason why Grandpa wasn't involved with the rest of the murders that we see throughout the game, is he was just kind of minding his own business. And those were just some of my thoughts about how the plot could still possibly make sense in a way, even though we know the twists, and I think it's just kind of interesting. But I am ready to move on now that I have my acorn/grenade, and we're gonna have to hoof it over to the bridge. So we're in for a little bit of walking from this point, but it shouldn't take us too long to get over there. And then you can piece together all of the events of the game and all of the clues and all of the things that Ethan was trying to tell us. And it still paints a really good picture about his life and what he was going through. And you really have to feel bad for Ethan. He's a very sensitive boy, in touch with his emotions. He's very smart. He's very creative. He writes stories that his family doesn't appreciate. He escapes into a fantasy world, because I imagine living out here is very isolating. Especially when you have a brother that picks on you, a dad who's always very sad, your mother is very domineering, your uncle's a bit of a bully as well. I did point out the clock earlier, but I didn't say anything about it at the time because I didn't want it to be a spoiler. But there's a few of these clocks in the game. One side is stuck at 7 o'clock, which is the time that Paul, quote, found Ethan. And 7:04, which is the final time that we see as we float away. So this is another one of those little fine details that makes you think, like, yeah, this definitely took place in just a short time span. You're basically seeing the time span of Ethan's life draining away on the two sides of that clock. And I don't normally like games with the ending of, it was just a dream. It's really a lame cop-out, but I actually like it in this case, because yes, that is still technically the ending, but your imagination can really run wild with your interpretation of how all the events take place. Whether or not these deaths are even real. Maybe this fire happened like 30 years ago, and the family are all dead. They've all moved out. That's why all of the houses and the buildings are all dilapidated. Maybe what Paul is seeing is a projection about how Ethan feels about his life and his family. He feels that it's very empty and it's very sad and it's very lonely. Once you're on the bridge, you're gonna come to the very last little lookout area here, and with our grenade, we're actually gonna throw it in the water, and we're gonna be aiming towards the mine. So just above where the entrance to the rock is, over there to go through the tunnel towards the mine. We're gonna throw that grenade, and then we have one more step before we're fully finished. Because I still have questions about Red Creek Valley, right? If the family was living here and he had missed supper, where were they living? Because they certainly weren't living in this house. So I do kind of like the theory that this is not reality. This is Ethan's distorted reality. Maybe some of this is not too far from the truth when you think about the fact that nobody has lived here except for the Carters since 1961. It's probably been a good 13 or 14 years since then. Yeah, that is a long time for things to fall into a state of disrepair. There are still, you know, those little subtle plot holes and things that don't quite have an explanation, but that's why they're really fun to think about and why it's really fun to just imagine and think about it. You know, if we go back and we look at the photo of the Carters, where Ethan had written about how his family was feeling on the day that the photo was taken, it is very indicative of their personalities probably any day, and also very, very accurate to how they were on the day of the fire, right? Missy was angry, so she swung the lantern, which ultimately caused the fire. Grandpa didn't say anything. He just wanted to get Travis out. Travis was very loud. He bursted in, told Ethan that he missed dinner. Uncle Chad was calling him names. And Ethan's father was very sad, trying to defend him against his uncle's very, very mean words. So was this photo taken on the day of the fire? Probably not, because the house is still ruined. Is this even a real photo? We don't know, right? I just love games that are sort of open to your own interpretation. Now, in order to reach the final step, I'm going to go back to our room, and I'm going to walk from here. One of the things that you may have noticed in the cutscene was that Ethan had drawn these bodies in the wall. They were drawings on the wall. They weren't actually bodies. There is nothing evil about the Vandergriff house, the Vandergriff fortune, Red Creek Valley. As far as we can see, all of this was imagined by Ethan. There was no sleeper. But I do think it's very telling that Ethan thought of this story of the sleeper, because it really seems like he's projecting this feeling of him being responsible or taking the brunt of this very dysfunctional family's negative emotions. This is a very, very unhappy family. Mom is very, very angry with Dad. Grandpa is probably still grieving the death of his wife, who died in a fire. Now, it said that she died in a fire at the Vandergriff mansion, so I don't know if that means that that house burned down twice, but if that is the case, that is extraordinarily bad luck. And I think that that is what happened, because the Vandergriff family is very, very rich. They haven't moved to the valley, but there's a ton of money, and it is probably possible that they rebuilt that house once after it burned down the first time, only for it to burn down again. Which could also be why maybe it's cursed, right? One of their family members had already died in that house. And I was only able to find this out by looking up information online, but apparently the Carter family was kind of the caretaker of the Vandergriff estate. And that's why they live here, and that's why they're the only family that live here. Which is a very sad and lonely existence, honestly, especially when you're stuck with your family who is like this. And even if there is no sleeper, there still is a lot of sadness and desolation and just a big black cloud hanging over this place, you know? I've also seen people with the theory that after Ethan passed away, the family couldn't take it anymore and they all took it out on each other, and maybe they all killed each other or died in some way. Maybe the way that they all died were ways that Ethan had imagined them dying in some of his moments where he was alone and feeling very, very negative about everything going on around him. I've made it back to the little warehouse area where we turned off the valve. We're gonna walk through this other door on the other side, and we can find a diver that has washed up on shore, which is apparently what we blew up with our grenade. We can pick up this rifle. And congratulations on your 100% completion. So I would love to hear everybody's thoughts and everybody's takes on this game. Also, you can see this clock, same thing. There is still a lot of questions and theories and possibilities that float in my mind, but I've told you my thoughts and what I think. We have completed everything. I definitely invite you to pick this up if you enjoyed watching it. Even if the plot has been spoiled for you, you can go through this with the set of eyes of knowing the twist and just looking for all of these little details and trying to piece together for yourself what you think happened. And the reason that I walked here, just as a closing note, instead of taking the lift down, for example, which would have been nice if that was the case. If I could have taken the lift down, then I would have, but I never sent the lift up. I never went up for any reason. I never sent the lift up, and so that means that I had to kind of improvise, and walking from the final scene was the quickest way for me to get down here. But in hindsight, if I had sent the lift up without getting in it, I could have used that as a shortcut and kind of saved myself a little bit of time. But it gave me a few extra minutes to give my thoughts and just kind of talk about my own thought process regarding the game. And I have enjoyed playing it. I have enjoyed playing it here for the channel. I've really enjoyed getting in and deep diving into people's theories. I've enjoyed looking at some of the things that the devs have talked about regarding this game. This is just a very, very fascinating experience for me, and I really hope that you all enjoyed this as well. And also, please let me know if you like these types of games, if you like this length of game, if you like one solid chunk of video. I definitely have a few other things up my sleeve that I could potentially play for you all. But for now, I just want to thank you all so very much for watching, especially if you stuck around for the whole thing. I really appreciate it. And hopefully I will be seeing you next time.